I don't know about you, but even though I'm a grown-up, I like being read aloud to. Especially in these times, I think we all could use another source of comfort. And for me, at least, being read aloud to is one. So I write a lot of short stories, and I thought I'd read some to you. They're for adults. They're really not for kids. The first is called Dribble, and the subtitle will be Rocky Meets Mrs. Maisel. You know that TV series? Okay, here we go. My father is Hasidic. You know, that tiny percentage of Jews that wear long black coats and black hats, living like it's the 13th century. Worse, he's the rabbi. Even worse, he's the rabbi of a synagogue in the middle of Hasidland, the Borough Park section of Brooklyn. I don't have a mother. Soon after I was born, she told my father that she had enough of the religious extremist craziness, and we never heard from her after that. And when I was maybe 6, I was old enough to realize why. My dad had already sent me to his cheder. That's a Hebrew first school where he's the principal. We start each morning by wrapping our wrists in phylacteries. That's a leather strap with a prayer attached that reminded us to be good. And on Saturday, we had to go to services, hours-long prayers, mainly in Hebrew, a lot in praise of God. I thought, if God is so great, why does he need us praising him for 2 hours every Saturday? What bothered me even more is that when I was nervous, I drooled. But for my classmates, that was only a second reason for them to make fun of me. The first was that I was the tallest kid in the class. They took to calling me Dribbling Goliath. One day, when I was in the 5th grade, the teacher hit my hand with a ruler for not paying attention. You see, the recess bell had already rung, and so I was looking out the window, eager to finally get out of my seat. The pain was nothing, but it was embarrassing. So I started drooling, and as soon as she let us go, I ran out into the schoolyard so the other kids wouldn't see. I wandered around sad, and a man came over. I had noticed him walking out from delicious knishes, which are potato pies wrapped in pastry. Hachi, you got to stay here. No, my dog is not even interested in this. Anyway, because he wasn't wearing a black coat and hat, I figured he wasn't from Borough Park, was just there to buy knishes. He asked, "What's the matter?" I said, "Nothing." Not wanting to push, he looked around the schoolyard and asked, "How come that basketball court has no rim?" I shrugged, and he said, "That's crazy. Kids need a basketball for recess, especially you, because you're tall for your age." I said, "I don't know how to play basketball." And he said, "I can teach you. Who's the principal?" Next I knew, he had convinced my father to let him put up a rim. What convinced my father was, kids need to let off steam so they can pay attention in class. Perfect. His name is Jacob, and he explained that he's free during the day because he has the night shift as a warehouseman. Every day he taught me shooting, dribbling, defense, and he insisted I was a natural. For 3 years, he never missed a day. To help keep me motivated, he would pretend to be Marv Albert, sportscaster for the New York Knicks, and do the play-by-play with me as the star. 3 seconds left. David drives to the hoop and scores. Knicks win! One day, he brought another man with him. "Hi, I'm Matt Knight. I'm a high school basketball coach. Jacob says you got some hoop." I got nervous and drooled. I wiped it away. Jacob said, "Show him something, just one move." I went to the free throw line, faked left, went right, and dunked. No biggie, but Coach Matt said, "Kid, we want you in our high school. Can I speak with your parents?" I explained that there was no way. I have to stay at Base Eretz Yisrael. But he and Jacob insisted, so I didn't have a choice. I whispered, "I don't have a mom, but my dad's the principal and he's in there." Of course, my father said no, and he exploded when Coach Matt revealed which high school. Christ the King. Without thinking, I got angry, flashing on all the misery I had as a chassid and in cheder, and took a set of phylacteries that was on my father's desk, fired it to the ground, and yelled, "I am going, I am absolutely going." Of course, my father tried to prevent me. First, he tried to pull me out of the car. Jacob was driving me to Christ the King. My father followed him and stomped into the principal's office. "My son will stay at Beth Yisrael." The principal required, "Do you love your son?" "Of course." "Is it really best for him to never have a choice about how to live? Having seen life here, if he still wants to be a chassid, he will. Remember, as a Christian school, we believe in the same Old Testament and good values you do." My father muttered, "I'll give it 1 week." School was still school, boring. I lived for recess, and especially for basketball practice. At my first practice, the kids were standoffish. After all, I was the only white kid, and by this point, age 15, I was 6 feet 4 inches tall. By my senior year, I'd become the star and all-league. It was the big game against our rival, Holy Cross. Wouldn't you know, at the last second, we were behind by 1. Their coach, having scouted me, had a player foul me. Free throw shooting is my weakness. I stood at the free throw line with the fans screaming. I drooled and wiped it away, but it came right back. Just before I was to take the shot, their coach called timeout. He wanted to ice me. If I made 1 free throw, the game would be tied and go into overtime. If somehow I made both, we'd win. I don't believe in miracles anymore, but wiping the drool away, I made the first shot. And with the second one in the air, I wiped more drool. It went in. The fans rushed onto the court, and my teammates carried me off. As I was getting into Jacob's car to go home, my father, who had never come to a game, walked over with a woman. He said, "Gut, and this is your mother." P.S. When Jacob lost his job at the warehouse, it had replaced him with a robot. My father hired Jacob as the Cheder athletic director. Anyway, that story is called Dribble. Next story. It's called Pork and Beans. This guy threw 2 plastic cards from the window of his black Mercedes. One of us in the homeless camp just stared at it. Another one picked it up and flung it like a baseball card into the trash heap. Another guy picked up the other card. He came over me. I was eating a can of pork and beans. I'm grateful it now comes in a pop-top can so I could open it without a can opener. He told me that a guy had just dropped a $100 gift card to a restaurant called La Frou Frou and asked if I wanted to go with him. Duh. But when we got there, we looked at the menu in the window. $100 would cover 1 person, maybe. The guy was a Christian, and so he said, "You go." I tried to refuse, but he tossed a gift card at me, and he walked off. I looked through the window and saw a man at a podium who seemed like a Walmart greeter, but he was wearing a suit. A couple in fancy clothes walked in. He smiled and escorted him into the restaurant itself. Finally, I got the courage to walk in, and he said in a French accent, "Sorry, La Frou Frou has a dress code." I showed him the gift card and explained that a guy in a black Mercedes gave it to me. He muttered, no longer in a French accent, "That must be the owner, wait." He strode off and returned. "Follow me." And he sat me in the corner by the kitchen door. Another man in a suit, this one wearing a bow tie, handed me, as carefully as it was like a newborn baby, 2 huge leather-bound books. They looked like encyclopedia books. I opened one, and it was the menu. The only thing I thought I understood was aqua. I figured that was water, and it was $7. Other stuff was like Terrine de Canard, $52, and Foie de Veau à Porto, $32. Did that mean with port? Port, I know. I looked at the other book, wines. There were 2 prices next to each one, like $20 and $98. I figured out that probably meant that a bottle is $98 and a glass is $20. I only had my $100 gift card, no wine. The waiter came over and asked in a French accent, "Would you like a cocktail to start?" I said, "No." And then he said, "May I take your order?" I had no idea what to order, let alone say it in French. So I told him to get me whatever, but that I have only a $100 gift card. He nodded. He brought me a piece of chicken, some carrots, and cut up potatoes on the side. It was okay, but honestly, I liked my pork and beans better. After that, he brought me a scoop of vanilla ice cream with bits of strawberry on top. It was good. He brought me the bill, $96.55. I realized then that I'm supposed to tip him. I gave him the $100 gift card and told him to keep the rest. I knew that was too small a tip, so I reached into my pocket and he said, don't worry about it. Thank you so much for coming to La Frou-Frou. I was intrigued by the whole thing. It was a world I knew nothing about, and everyone there seemed so comfortable. I asked the waiter, could I get a job here, like in the kitchen? I guess his job is to not argue with the customers. He said, I'll see, sir. He came back and said, the owner expresses his regrets, but there are no vacancies at this time. I was grateful to be out of there, but still liked the idea of working at a fancy restaurant. As I was walking back to the homeless camp, on the very same block as La Frou-Frou was another fancy restaurant, Il Maestro. I went in and asked its podium guy if they need help in the kitchen. He stiffened, but I said, hey, please, would you check? He sighed and he went off. And when he returned, he says, well, occasionally we need substitute dishwashers. If you like, leave your phone number and we'll call you if we need you. I explained that I have no phone, but I'd come back every morning and see. He pursed his lips and I walked out. But I kept my promise. And on the fourth day, I guess seeing I was reliable, a woman told me to come back to the kitchen. Long story short, after a year, I became what they call a sous chef. Yeah, that means I mainly just cut vegetables, but still. And I make enough money to move from the camp to a small apartment. I went back to the camp to thank the guy for letting me be the one to go to La Frou-Frou. I wasn't sure he'd be there, but there he was, eating a can of Spam. I couldn't bring myself to go up to him. Okay, that's Pork and Beans. Next story is called, I'll walk the dog, I promise. We're too busy for a dog. My wife and I work full-time, and with a child there are endless add-ons, Little League, doctor appointments, after-school science program. Apparently the school's too busy teaching other things to bother with science. So when Emily, our daughter, asked and asked and asked for a dog, we had to say no. Until she wore us down. Let's just look. Ha! I was hoping the shelter would only have curs and yap dogs, but my luck, there were two heartbreakers. One was Lucy, who pawed against the cage, begging to come out. And Emily pleaded, how can you leave her in there? They'll kill her. I tried. There'll always be another dog when we're ready. Lucy continued to paw while Emily sobbed, I'll walk her, I promise. Whereupon the attendant, with perfect timing, asked if we'd like to take Lucy for a test walk. And thus, we were the not all proud owners of Lucy. I insisted on crate training and bought the admittedly unwelcoming black jail. But the damn dog would not go in. Emily tried, my wife tried, I tried, but Lucy would not go in. Except one time when she raced in for a piece of steak I put in there, and before we could close the crate's door, she raced out. Lucy would, however, jump on any soft surface, especially Emily's bed. Guess where Lucy sleeps? Daddy loses again. Of course, there have been a couple of accidents, and to Emily's credit, she jumped to clean him up, except for the diarrhea, which even the truck-mounted carpet cleaning guy couldn't fully clean. Of course, Lucy brings upside. The family likes taking her for walks, getting down on the floor to give her belly rubs, and her nuzzling among us as we watch TV. So I shouldn't have been surprised when after just 2 days, Emily peeped, Lucy needs a companion. Can we see if that other cute dog is still available? Anyway, that's I'll walk him, I promise. Next story is Lemonade. I ride the school bus and every day pass Six Flags and its huge roller coaster. The other kids said how they loved their trip to Six Flags. I had never been there because my mother said we couldn't afford it. She looked it up and it cost $45 per adult, $30 per child, not counting $20 for parking and much more for food, which is expensive there. So she would need more than $100. So I decided to make the money by having a lemonade stand in front of the apartment building where we live. It wasn't easy. Yes, we had a little table, a pitcher, sugar, and paper cups, but no lemons, and to buy them in the store would be too expensive. But I remembered that a block away there's a house with a big lemon tree in front. I went over and asked the owner if I could buy lemons, and he said, I have more than I know what to do with. Take all you want. My mother said, this is a dangerous neighborhood. Every hour, bring the money inside, so if anyone tries to steal it, they won't get much. But I said, it feels more grown-up to keep all the money with me in the cigar box that I would use to hold the money. Sales were slow to start. I made only $8 the first day. I guess that people had to get to know that the lemonade stand would be there after school every day and every Saturday afternoon. After 6 weeks, I had made $88. I had wanted to pay my mother back for the sugar and paper cups, but she refused. I figured that in one, maybe 2 more weekends, I'd have enough money for Six Flags, plus maybe a few dollars to buy a souvenir. But my mom was right. A teenager came up and threatened to kill me if I didn't give him the cigar box. I had no choice. He told my dad, who I'd rarely seen. He said he would pay and come with us to Six Flags. I loved the roller coaster. I loved all of it. But most of all, looking at my mom and dad makes me think that just maybe they'll get back together. Anyway, that's called Lemonade. Next story is called Most Likely to Succeed. I bit my tongue when Heather preened. I got into all 10 colleges. Let's see, Stanford, Chicago, and all 8 Ivies. Oh yes, including Harvard. So she was sure to beat me in the election for Most Likely to Succeed. She asked, Sarah, where will you be going? I wasn't embarrassed to admit that I was starting at the community college. I explained that even though my parents have money, my mom has a PhD in the evaluation of education. And she says I'll get a better education at the community college because the teachers are hired on how well they teach, not their research. There are plenty of honors classes at community colleges, plenty of extracurriculars and such. Besides, she said it's better to live at home for another 2 years than transfer to a more prestigious school than I could have gotten into as a freshman. It's the name on the diploma that counts, she said. I said okay to that because I love my parents and actually feel better about living with them for 2 years than with 2 roommates in one tiny room in a loud dorm. Heather sniffed. But then I had my accident. My parents had bought me an expensive bike for my birthday, an optic yellow vest, and a warning to be careful. I told them I would, and I was. But riding to school one day, someone opened their car door right into my bike, which shoved me into the middle of the street. And someone ran over me, and now I'm a paraplegic. Heather scoffed. I am so sorry for your loss, but I'm sure playing the disability card, will help you. Now you're a shoo-in for Most Likely to Succeed. Of course, I wouldn't try to use my disability to my advantage, unlike Heather, who bragged that she used, quote, a whole deck of cards to get into those colleges. Disadvantage, minority, she's 1/16th Native American, an LGBTQIA plus question mark. She claims to be a Q. One of her posters says, Ivy wins, with a picture of her wearing an ivy crown. Her other poster went negative. Do you really want to vote for a rich kid? My poster said, everyone needs a friend, with a picture of 2 people holding hands, interracial, of course. Kids were telling her that people liked my posters and me better. So maybe out of desperation, she told everyone that I refused to donate to Black Lives Matter. Yes, I didn't buy a raffle ticket from her because I had read that Black Lives Matter gave much of the donor money to friends who spent it on things like luxury houses. But she painted that as evidence that I am a rich white racist, and she won. But then, a kid who had tabulated the votes went to the counselor and, I guess feeling guilty, said that Heather had paid him to remove enough of my votes to give her the win. The counselor verified that, then contacted the National Association of College Admissions, whereupon not only were all of Heather's college admissions rescinded, she was flagged so that no 4-year college could admit her. I must admit being amused that she's ending up with me at the community college, and it can't hurt my chances of transferring to a prestigious college that I won Most Likely to Succeed. And the final story is Zapped. I'm not as bad as I seem. Sure, I dress like a pig. And I ask teachers, why the hell do we need to learn this crap? And I carry around a fly zapper, you know, the ones that look like a kid's tennis racket. And I enjoy zapping them. Makes me look like a sadist, but I'm not bad, really. But the king of the badass club invited me to join. I was kind of lonely, so I figured, what the hell? He said there was a 2-step initiation. First, I had to get a tattoo of a skull and crossbones on the tip of my middle finger. Second, I had to climb down into the sewer main, walk the half-mile to the other end, and climb out using the ladder that's there. I had always wanted to get a tattoo and figured a tiny one on my fingertip wouldn't be too bad. I could always hide it by bending my finger. The inking hurt more than I thought it would. I guess fingertips are sensitive. Then the 4 members of the Badass Club, the King, the Prince, the Duke, and the Earl, walked me to a sewer at the far end of town where no one goes except the garbage trucks to stuff into the landfill. They pulled back the round sewer cover, and King said, "Down, boy." Of course, I was scared, but I had come that far, so. It didn't smell as bad as I thought, just kind of moldy, like a basement. And I only saw 1 rat, and it was more scared of me than I was of it. But I walked as fast as I could toward the other end, or what I thought was the end. I was wearing my Apple Watch, and when I reached the half-mile mark, there was no ladder. I figured King probably was just estimating, so I kept walking. But at the 1-mile mark, I was scared, so I turned around. But when I got back to where I'd climbed down, I could not push up the heavy round sewer cover. I said, "Come on, guys, open up." Silence. I yelled it, "Open up!" Nothing. Then I screamed it, "Open up!" Nothing. I alternated screaming and resting. A whole day later, no water. I screamed and finally heard a truck pull up. I screamed. The garbage guys opened it and I escaped. The King, the Prince, the Duke, and the Earl went to jail, tried as adults for attempted murder. And I've decided to put away my zapper. Anyway, those are half dozen of my short stories. I'll see you next month with another half dozen. I hope you enjoy being read aloud to. I enjoyed reading to you. In any event, I'm Marty Nemko. Oh, you should read to your children and maybe even to your friends or to your loved ones. Anyway, bye.